Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
I saw her at the play. When she waved, I went to sit with her during the break. It had been a very long time since we met. If someone didn't tell me her name, I might not have recognized her. She spoke to me with a smile. You know, it's been many years since our first meeting. Time flies. We're all getting older. Do you recall the first time I met you? You invited me for lunch. Did I remember? It happened 20 years ago in Paris. I had a small apartment in the Latin Quarter, and I barely earned enough to get by. She had read one of my books and sent me a letter about it. I wrote back to thank her. Soon, I received another letter from her, saying she was passing through Paris and wanted to talk. But she had limited time, and her only free moment was the next Thursday. She would be at the Luxembourg Gardens in the morning, and she asked if I could treat her to a little lunch at Foyot's afterward. Foyot's was a fancy restaurant where French senators dined. I had never thought of going there because it was too expensive for me. But I felt flattered, and I was too young to say no to a woman. Actually, not many men learn to say no to a woman until they are much older, and it doesn't really matter to the woman what they say. I had 80 gold francs to last me the rest of the month, and a simple lunch wouldn't cost more than 15. If I skipped coffee for the next 2 weeks, I could manage. I said I'd meet my pen pal at Foyot's on Thursday at 12:30. She was not as young as I thought, and she looked more imposing than pretty. In fact, she was 40 years old, a lovely age, but not the kind that makes you fall in love at first sight, and she had more teeth than needed, all white and large. She was chatty, but she seemed eager to talk about me, so I was ready to listen. I was surprised when I saw the menu because the prices were higher than I expected. But she reassured me. I never eat much for lunch, she said. Don't say that. I replied kindly. I only have one thing. People eat too much nowadays. Maybe a little fish. I wonder if they have salmon. Well, it was early in the year for salmon, and it wasn't on the menu, but I asked the waiter. Yes, they had just received a beautiful salmon, the first one that season. I ordered it for her. The waiter asked if she wanted something while they prepared the salmon. No, she said, I only have one thing. Unless you have a bit of caviar. I don't mind caviar. I felt a bit worried. I knew I couldn't afford caviar, but I couldn't just tell her that. So, I told the waiter to bring caviar. For myself, I picked the cheapest thing on the menu, a mutton chop. I think eating meat is not a good idea, she said. How can you work after eating heavy stuff like chops? I don't like stuffing my stomach. Then, we had to decide on drinks. I don't usually have anything to drink for lunch, she said. Me neither, I replied quickly. Except for white wine, she continued, as if I hadn't said anything. French white wines are light and great for digestion. What would you like to drink? I asked, trying to be hospitable but not too enthusiastic. She flashed her white teeth with a friendly look. My doctor only allows me to drink champagne. I might have turned a bit pale. I ordered half a bottle and casually mentioned that my doctor had strictly forbidden me from drinking champagne. What will you have to drink, then? Water. She enjoyed the caviar and salmon while chatting cheerfully about art, books, and music. However, I couldn't help but worry about the bill. When my mutton chop arrived, she got a bit serious with me. I can see you like to have a big lunch. I think it's a mistake. Why not follow my lead and only have one thing? I'm sure you'd feel much better. I'm having just one thing, I said, as the waiter returned with the menu. She waved him off casually. No, I never really eat much for lunch. Just a little bite, more for conversation than anything else. I couldn't possibly eat more unless they have those enormous asparagus. I'd hate to leave Paris without trying them. My heart sank. I'd seen those asparagus in stores, and I knew they were incredibly expensive. I had often longed to try them. Madam wants to know if you have those giant asparagus, I asked the waiter. I desperately wished he would say no. A joyful smile spread across his kind, priest-like face, and he assured me that they had some that were extraordinarily large, splendid, and tender, a real marvel. I'm not hungry at all, my guest sighed, but if you insist, I don't mind having some asparagus. I ordered them. Aren't you going to have any? No, I don't like asparagus. I know some people don't like them. The truth is, you harm your taste buds by eating too much meat. We waited for the asparagus to be prepared. Panic started to grip me. It was no longer about how much money I'd have left for the rest of the month, it was whether I had enough to cover the bill. It would be humiliating to discover that I was 10 francs short and then have to ask my guest for help. I couldn't bring myself to do that. I knew exactly how much I had, and if the bill was more than that, I decided I would dramatically reach into my pocket and exclaim that my money had been stolen. Of course, it would be awkward if she didn't have enough money either. In that case, the only option would be to leave my watch and say I'd return to pay later. The asparagus arrived. They were huge, juicy, and tempting. The smell of the melted butter teased my nose, much like the offerings of the virtuous Semites delighted the nostrils of Jehovah. I watched my companion devour them in large, indulgent bites, while I, in my polite manner, discussed the state of the drama in the Balkans. Finally, she finished. Coffee? I asked. Yes, just some ice cream and coffee, she replied. I didn't care anymore, so I ordered coffee for myself and ice cream and coffee for her. You know, there's something I strongly believe in, she said while enjoying the ice cream. After a meal, one should feel like they could eat a little more. Are you still hungry? I asked weakly. Oh no, I'm not hungry. You see, I don't eat lunch. I just have a morning coffee and then dinner. I never eat more than one thing for lunch. I was talking about you. I see. Then something terrible happened. While we were waiting for the coffee, the head waiter, with a false smile on his face, brought a big basket full of large peaches. They had the blush of a young girl, and the rich colors of an Italian landscape. But peaches weren't in season, were they? I couldn't imagine what they cost. But I would soon find out because my guest, continuing her conversation, absent-mindedly picked one up. You see, you filled your stomach with a lot of meat, referring to my one sad little chop, and you can't eat anymore. But I've just had a small meal, and I'll enjoy a peach. The bill arrived, and when I paid, I realized I only had enough for a rather meager tip. Her eyes briefly glanced at the 3 francs I left for the waiter, and I knew she thought I was being cheap. But as I left the restaurant, I faced an entire month ahead of me with not a single penny in my pocket. Follow my example, she said as we shook hands, and never eat more than one thing for lunch. I'll do even better, I replied. I won't have anything for dinner tonight. Joker, she laughed cheerfully, hopping into a cab. You're quite the joker. But I've had my revenge in the end. I don't think I'm a vengeful person, but when the gods take a hand in matters, it's almost satisfying to witness the result. Today, she weighs 21 stone.